to pay for it myself, so it's not the grandest experiment, but it was expensive at the time. There's the first part of the experiment. Well, let me tell you what it was. I bought a piece of iron and a file. And I took that file and I filed the iron down and made a pile of iron dust. And then I took the iron filings and stuck them in a salt shaker and sprinkled it on a piece of paper. And there's my experiment. What happens? It just forms a random pile. I throw away these iron filings, sprinkle some more random piles every time I sprinkle it. Then comes the more expensive part of the experiment, because what I did next is I bought a magnet. I put a magnet underneath the piece of paper, then I sprinkled the iron filings. And lo and behold, you get this beautiful array called, what appears to be the shape of this magnetic field. And the significance about this is, it's the field that gives shape to matter. Matter without a field is random. And so basically, what physics was saying is, matter plus field equals structure. And the issue is, what if you don't believe in the field, like conventional Newtonian biology or conventional allopathic medicine, which is just getting into the understanding of the field? What if you don't understand the field and don't believe in its existence? What would you do then if I said, how come the iron filings fall in this pattern? And then what you would say is, well, as a scientist, there's something called reductionism, which is part of Newtonian science. It says, if it's made out of matter, you can take it apart and study the pieces, and by taking things apart, you'll get an insight to how something works. That's how we learn how the body works. You take it apart, find out all the organs, the cells, the molecules, and then you get an understanding of how it works. So I say to a Newtonian person, how come I get this pattern? And they say, well, I don't know, but give me some of those filings, I'll take them apart, and I'm sure inside I will find the pattern in there somewhere. And that sounds kind of silly and humorous, except for the reality is when we look at pathology and disease, and I said, well, what's the relevance of that? I go, well, consider your cells as iron filings. Your cells are in a field forming a structure. And when you have a pathology, it's not necessarily inside the cell, it's a response to the field. And why is that relevant? Because if you don't look for the field, then you miss the cause of most pathologies. And this is what we're beginning to find out. Very rarely are pathologies actually an organic issue inside the system. In fact, less than 10% of illness is actually organically, genetically related. That 90% of illness is lifestyle, which means the way you are living in your field is what's causing the problem, and then the body shows up out of structure. It's a reflection that you're not in a field the way you're living. So your body is a complement to your field, basically. So it's a feedback. And so I really love it because Albert Einstein gave me the wonderful quote that I love to use, and the quote is very simply, the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. The particle means matter. So basically what physicists are saying is, well, you look at all the matter and everything, if you negate the field, if you don't talk about the field, well, then you don't even have any understanding of why matter has the structure it has. So basically it says you cannot live in a world without the understanding of quantum mechanics, because quantum mechanics gives us the mechanisms, the foundation of why the world we live in is shaped the way it is and operates the way it does. So we're really beginning to move into this energy science and energy medicine, and even allopathic medicine, of course, is using scan systems, CAT scans, MRI scans, PET scans, all these different scan systems. I say, well, what are they reading? They're not reading the body, they're reading the body's energy. And these, of course, were created by the physicists, not by the medical community, because the physicists believe in the field. The medical community uses the image as a roadmap, but don't understand that what you're really looking at is an energy profile. And if you change the energy field, you can change the energy profile. Significance for us to just jump to is the fact is this: what's the definition of the field? And I love it because the definition of the field is very simple: invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. And I go, that's really cool. Boy, does that sound familiar, though? Oh. Spirit. What's spirit? Oh, spirit. Invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. And basically what we're finding is quantum mechanics is returning to a time of understanding of the energy, the invisible forces that are shaping the world that we live in. Understood by earlier people, not as a science, but understood as a response to what was going on in the world. But science is now getting down to the mechanics of it and recognizing that the field is an influential force in shaping the expression of matter. So I said, well, if we put quantum physics into our mix of a culture and the mechanisms of it, how would that change our culture? So I said, well, once we understand the spirit and field are one and the same, then we can go back to our misperception and say, this was the belief system and the way of life we created based on that belief system. I said, what does it change to? I say, when we understand that biology is based on quantum physics, then we have a new cultural expression of life. First of all, there's a unity of polarities. This is what quantum physics talks about. Everything is one. There is a one thing. And so the whole world, which is based on dualities, has to come to a better understanding that everything is in the middle, that we're all connected, that there's a unity of everything. And this is a big issue in our world because polarities are creating the caustic problems between entities that see themselves as polar opposites. And we see that at any level from male and female, which is, of course, one of the big problems because it is coming to the midpoint, the androgynous understanding that males and females are equally capable of doing all the different kinds of chores that we need to do in this world and do the jobs and be intelligent enough to do it. They have to come to that middle. Right now, of course, what we're finding is in our political spectrum, the Democrats are fighting the Republicans as if they're two different worlds to live in, and in reality, it's only one world, and they better find some unity in this understanding at some point. Now, we also began to know that consciousness influences life. Why? Because consciousness is not a physical, tangible item. It's a process from the brain and from the field. So basically, it says consciousness is what's really controlling life. And yet, we throw consciousness out in favor of the physical, mechanical interpretation of the body as controlling life. The unity of energy and matter, that's basically the fundamental polarities that have to come together, is that we have negated the invisible realm as not being that relevant, when in fact, quantum physics comes around and says that actually the complete opposite. It's the invisible realm that is more influential in our world than the physical realm is. And that we start to recognize and honor that and work with that, then we will improve our lot on this planet. Misperception number 2 is genetics control biology. And I say we tell a cultural expression of that belief system. Well, basically what it says is this: genes control our life. That means you don't control your life, your genes control your life. And genes determine an organism's value. Oh, that person doesn't come from good genetic stock. Or this individual has got better genes than you have. And so we start to rate things on a mechanical, material level based on the genes that they have. Then we also learn that we are victims of our heredity. Meaning, well, as far as we know, we didn't pick the genes, we can't change them, and they control us. So the genes are our boss, and we're not the boss of the genes. And unfortunately, once you buy that you are a victim, then you need to buy a rescuer. And of course, the pharmaceutical industry was so happy to stand in there and become a rescuer of everybody. And we buy that because we believe we're the victim. So I said, well, is that really true? Well, once we bought the concept of DNA, we bought into the belief that DNA was the source of life. You say, well, how did they jump to that? And the thing was, well, wait, we were living in a Newtonian world when they were first doing all this biology. The Newtonian world said everything's physical and mechanical. So if you have a physical mechanical body, then somewhere inside must be a physical mechanical thing that provides for the body. So when DNA was ultimately discovered as related to the heredity, science took an immediate jump and said, yes, DNA controls your life. Actually, it was a hypothesis by Francis Crick, the guy Watson and Crick, you know? Francis Crick gave us a hypothesis in 1958 called the central dogma. This is what I taught in medical school. You learned it in school. It was that flow of information. DNA goes to RNA, goes to protein. And this was a dogma that was put into the books in 1958. It was a hypothesis. It was the idea that information from the genes unfolds and creates your life. And what was really relevant about this is that was one of those hypotheses that everybody said, boy, that sounds right. I believe that. How many people believe that? Everybody raise their hands. They all raise their hands and say, that's the new law. And all of a sudden, it's in the textbook. It's in the textbook from 58 to 68 to 78. And at some point, we all forgot. That was never scientifically established. That was a hypothesis. But when you repeat the hypothesis 10, 20, 30 years, at some point it became an absolute truth. Everybody walks around, yeah, genes do this, and genes cause that, and genes do turn on, and genes turn off, and all this kind of stuff. And the fact was, where the hell did you get that idea from? The textbook. I go, yeah, but where did the textbook get the idea from? Oh, a hypothesis by Francis Crick that we never tested. And it was interesting because after teaching medical school for all those years, when I left the university, it was the first time that I actually looked up the word dogma. And I was so blown away and shocked, for the definition of dogma is a truth based on religious persuasion and not scientific fact. And I realized at that moment, my God, in all the years I was teaching medical school, I was teaching religion. And so, but when we buy into that, then you buy into the story, as Life magazine shows you right here, where you're born that way. Not just your physicality, but your behaviors and your emotions apparently seem to be regulated by genes. A gene for happiness and a gene for this and that. And we bought into that. And I say, well, that's what I was teaching 30 years ago or more, and we called it genetic determinism. Basically said, genes determine your life. And then, as I told you, as far as we know, we didn't pick the genes we came with. We can't change the genes if we don't like them. And that then all of a sudden created the concept that we're victims of heredity. Yes, it's running in your family, and you can't do a damn thing about it. And all of a sudden we bought into the victim, and as soon as you bought the victim, you necessitated a rescuer. Because if you're a victim, you need something to come and save your life.